Hi, it's Pete here from See Your Toes again, and this is podcast number 28. Today, I have a special guest. Her name is Robyn Dobbins, and she has quite a list of things that have been wrong with her in the past. She had severe mental illness, including post-partum depression, bipolar disorder, severe depression, OCD, and even as a teenager, she went through a lot of suicidal thoughts. It isn't just about mental disorders, though, because she also had Hashimoto's, which is an autoimmune disorder. So she was being attacked in her mind as well as in her body. Now, she managed to change all this around. She managed to reverse it and put it all into remission. And the story is all about that process. It's a bit bouncy because, as she freely admits, her mind does bounce all over the place. So it's not necessarily in chronological order, but it makes for a damn good story anyhow. I've broken it again into two parts because the whole conversation goes for 1 hour and 40 minutes. So I've divided it into two 50-minute podcasts. So I hope you enjoy it, and I hope you get something out of it. If you suffer from depression, bipolar disorder, or Hashimoto's, then I hope you get something out of listening to this podcast. Thank you very much. Hi, Robyn. Thank you for joining my podcast. Thank you very much.
Oh, Pete, it's great to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
So can you start off by telling me a little bit about you and your history, Robyn?
Sure. Well, I have a story that kind of floats around in several different directions, but the big thing is that I have been eating a low carb, ketogenic diet for almost 7 years now. And the reason why I started it was because I had turned 40 and my doctor did all the normal tests that you do when you're turning 40, and he told me that my cholesterol was bad, so that I would have to be put on a statin. And thankfully, I had just enough knowledge in my bank that I kind of knew that statins weren't all they were cracked up to be. I didn't know much else than that. I was also on other medications at the time, so I just didn't want to be on another medication. So I asked my doctor, am I going to die in 3 months? And he said, no, I don't think so. I said, so will you allow me the opportunity to change my diet and see if I can solve this issue with diet? Because I really just don't want to be put on any medication. And so he said, yeah, that's fine. So that's what I did. At the time, I was following Vinnie Tortorich. He is the creator of NSNG, which stands for No Sugars, No Grains. And I just started doing what he was saying, which was cut out all the sugars, cut out all the grains. And so that was still very vegetable heavy, meat heavy way of eating, and I did that for the 3 months, went back in for my blood work, and the blood work was showing great numbers. The doctor said, you're doing great. Whatever it is that you're doing, keep doing it. And I didn't have to go on medication. So I did. I kept doing it. Well, to go back several years, I had been diagnosed. Initially, my diagnosis was after my son was born. My official diagnosis at the time was postpartum depression, which my doctor at the time threw some antidepressants at me and sent me on my way. And then as that went on, eventually I kind of just took myself off the medication. I was pregnant a second time, and I realized that I was not really winning that fight with my head. So I actually was put back on antidepressants while I was pregnant with my second child. In that time, after she was born, she was only a couple months old, we moved, and I stopped seeing those doctors because we weren't in the area anymore, and the medication just kind of fell by the wayside. This went on for a couple years, and I started realizing that again, I was not winning the battle. I was angry all the time. Um, my moods were just all over the place. So I found another doctor and I went to him, and um, I was diagnosed as bipolar, and my bipolar disorder was leaning heavily into severe depression, and I had OC. So again, they start throwing medications at me. So when we get to 7 years ago and I decide to change my diet, I was already on antipsychotics and antidepressants. Never felt healed. Um, Actually, I just really felt sedated. I never felt better. So when I was awake, all that anger, all of that anxiety, all of the uh, just racing thoughts, all of that stuff still existed. It's just that the medications basically knocked me out and I was asleep. So I have 2 children, a husband that travels for work, and I literally have to set an alarm to wake up to get the kids to school. I go home and go back to sleep. I have to set an alarm to wake up to be awake when they return from school, do whatever the nighttime things are. As soon as I get them to bed, I go back to bed. And that's how my life was for
Okay.
many, many years.
Can I ask you, Robyn, while you were talking, there's a whole bunch of questions I sort of thought through at the time. So I'm going to ask a couple of them, and I hope to put them into chronological order.
Yeah, I'm
Right.
very bad at chronological order. Sorry about that.
Yeah, that's all right. So right back near the start, when you first figured out, because even when right back at the start you mentioned cholesterol. What were you a big person? What was triggering the cholesterol in that situation? Was it a poor lifestyle? Where I know a lot of people, including myself, are told that we've got high cholesterol. In your situation, though, what was predating that?
Well, I was completely on the standard American diet at the time. I was blissfully unaware that had extra weight. I always felt like I was the smallest person, so
I
I
like
just
that. I like that. I like the blissfully unaware. That means you're happy as Larry. Only somebody else says that you're not supposed to be happy as Larry.
Yeah, I really had no idea, honestly. I mean, I was asleep most of the time. So when I woke up, the last thing I was thinking about is how I looked. And so it really at the time did not compute. But my diet consisted of eating whatever the kids didn't finish eating, hamburger helper, Pop Tarts, cereal. Oh my goodness, I'd eat 2, 3, 4 bowls of cereal. Um, Processed foods like frozen dinners, those types of things. It had to be quick. I didn't have the time or the energy to prepare big meals. Perhaps on the weekends when my husband was home, we would cook meals together. But during the week, especially during the day, if I woke up, it would be like I'm going to cram this bowl of cereal down my throat, and then I'm going to go back to sleep.
Yep.
So my diet just was very poor at the time.
Okay. Then when you had your first child, you mentioned that you got post-partum depression. First of all, can you explain what that is to me as well as the other listeners, and how does it compare with postnatal depression?
Oh, I'm going to go ahead and assume that's the same thing.
I was
Maybe
wondering.
just different terminology across the pond.
Maybe it's because I'm a damn foreigner, you see, from the other side of the world.
Yeah, we say things correctly over here because we stole it from everybody else.
Bad. Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
that would probably be the same thing. So basically,
Okay.
after my son was born, what really I didn't really pay attention to it because I think that I suffered from depression from probably middle school forward with no diagnosis and very much quiet and alone about how I was feeling. In high school, I was planning ways to kill myself, and that never really went away. I just pretended it wasn't there. And I just didn't say anything about it. I think I told my sister. My sister kind of rescued me, and if it wasn't for her, I don't know what would have happened in the high school years. But certainly after my son was born, it all came rushing back to the point that my husband was able to see it. We were having an argument. I couldn't speak. I was so just I don't know, I can't even describe it, but my brain was just so taken over that I couldn't speak. So he was
Mm.
saying stuff to me and I was writing it down and he was reading it and he would speak, I would write, he would speak, I would write. And then
That's hard to
then
have an
he
argument when you're writing it down.
I was writing very angrily. So, but then he finally he said, "Do you want to kill yourself? Do you want to hurt the baby?" And I was like, "Yes." Not that I ever wanted to hurt the child, but um, I did not want to be around him. I mean, some of these notes that I was writing to myself was, I don't want to be here anymore. I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to be part of this. It's just I didn't want to exist. I really just did not want to exist. I was not plotting anything, but I certainly didn't feel like I deserved to be on the face of the earth. So he took me. Actually, he took me to the ER, and we went to the ER. And in fact, the only time my son had a bottle because he was my children breastfed, but he was on a bottle because I was in the hospital. So I was under observation for some time. They did end up releasing me. Someone with a much more dire incident needed to be tended to. So they did, after observation, let me out of the hospital, and of course with a bottle full of antidepressants. And this is what you have, and this will fix it. This will make it better.
Make it better, or at least make it go away
Well,
temporarily.
I guess that's the going theory, is that these
Yeah.
medications make it go away, but I don't know. I think if we polled people who were on the medication and said, "Do you actually think it went away?" They probably would say no.
Yeah.
Or especially someone who was able to do as I've done and not have to be on the medications anymore and be able to compare the two. This is way more amazing than it was when I was medicated.
Okay. Then with the cholesterol, so was the cholesterol before the postpartum depression or after?
It was after. So
Okay. Yeah.
yes. So
Okay.
I was 7-8 years later. So
Yeah.
I was on medication at the time that I had that blood work with the distressing cholesterol numbers.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Right.
I was already at this point diagnosed as bipolar, as depression, and obsessive compulsive disorder. So
Okay.
at that time, I was on the antipsychotics and the antidepressants, and honestly just did not want one more thing to have to manage.
Okay. What sort of, I know this is a personal question, but I've happened to see photos of you on X where you had before and after photos, or at least, a before and after photo. Change that to singular. And you're a lot bigger. Are you prepared to tell us what sort of weight you were at your peak, maybe when you were diagnosed with your cholesterol?
Sure. So at that time, well, let's just start off with I'm very short. I'm only 5'1", so I'm very short. And at the time, I was 150 pounds.
150 pounds. Now, hang on.
Oh, we got to do math, don't we?
I know. Where's my calculator? Just a minute, please. Stand by, please. Caller. 150 times 2.2. No, 150 divided by 2.2 is going to be 68 kilograms. Okay, so it's not massive, but by any means, but it's when you, like you say, when you're 5'1", it's going to show up, I guess. So it's not that you I hate talking about weight because people think that we're all about losing weight, but we're not. We're about gaining health, and losing weight can often happen as a result of gaining health. But it's just, I guess, for the listeners to get a handle on it, because a lot of people, of course, and I'm sure you understand this, a lot of people who have mental illness end up putting a lot of weight on. So there's discussion of whether that is because of the drugs. Of course, some drugs will make you put weight on. Other drugs, I guess, will make you take weight off. But also just a change in your metabolism that's saying, I'm going to slow down now. And so when your that's a big word for me, metabolism slows down, then of course you end up putting the weight on, especially if you're chugging down bowls of cereal
Yeah,
as your
and
staple
I
diet.
don't know if the medication was making me increase weight or if it was the diet or probably a combination of both. But I did not change my diet in any way, shape, or form because of my weight. Like I said, I was unaware that I was overweight. I really, at the time when I changed and started eating low carb, I was imagining little scrub brushes in my heart, just scrubbing out any buildup that was in there, and that was it. That was all I was thinking about, is that I don't want to be put on another medication. At the time, 7 years ago, this is just 7 years ago, I thought that my diagnosis was my diagnosis. I was going to be bipolar forever, and I was going to be medicated for that forever. And that was the only solution to that problem. Even though I didn't actually feel great, I just thought that that was the only way that I could manage the symptoms was with the medication, and that was a lifelong thing.
So then you were told that your cholesterol was spiraling out of control, and you thought, I can do something about this that doesn't involve medication, uh, statins. And we do know that statins are, let's face it, most people agree these days, apart from people who are trying to sell the stuff, that they do a whole lot of damage for no particular benefit, from what we can gather, unless you've already had a heart attack, apparently. That's a caveat. But I digress. What made you decide to change at that stage? So you're diagnosed, you've got lots of cholesterol, here's a statin. No, I don't want that statin. I'm going to do this. What prompted you to that decision? And when you decided on a decision, why was it that decision?
That was really all I knew at the time. I just had heard through Vinny's podcast, Fitness Confidential. I guess I had just heard someone, or my husband, who was listening to it as well, had heard something from someone that what we knew about statins wasn't what we thought we knew about statins. And a way to fix it was to go low carb. And so I just did that. That was really all I knew. There was no extra research or study or anything like that. I was like, I'm just going to try this. My husband, who was overweight and knew he was overweight, had tried to eat in that way several months prior. So I was not on board with it at all, and he ended up just throwing it by the wayside because we were making more than one meal every night, and he
Mm,
travels, and it was just very challenging.
yeah,
So
it would
once
be. And
I said I would do it, he was on board, so we actually started together, which I think that made it
that would make a
easier.
big difference. Yeah. And I can
Mhm.
understand with him too. I do a bit of traveling, maybe not as much as he does, but in my day job, I'll often go away for 1 or 2 nights a week. And the trips, the driving, any of the services in the UK are terrible. It's great if you want to eat crap food, but if you want to eat anything that's vaguely healthy, it's impossible. And then you're staying in a restaurant, and that means, certainly in the UK, every meal involves chips, fries.
Right.
It's really difficult to eat healthily. And if, like you say, he was in a position where he wanted to make an adjustment, but you didn't, then that's obviously going to create another difficulty. So I can fully understand that. Yeah.
Yeah, so when I said I wanted to do it, he was completely on board, and we jumped on, and just we just cut out all that sugar. We cut out all the grains. So there was no bread, there was no nightly bowl of ice cream. I love eating potato chips. All of that stuff. we just cut it out. And in the beginning, there was some substitutions. I learned how to eat high-fat yogurt because I never liked it before, but I still had that desire at nighttime to have that big bowl of ice cream, so I switched it over to yogurt. And, in the beginning, a lot of substitutions. However, I never ate sweeteners. I was
Oh, that's
I
good.
was just ahead of the keto craze as it stands now with all of the packaged keto foods. So we started out just ahead of that, thankfully. So we never bought any kind of keto bars or sweeteners or anything. If we sweetened anything, it may have been with honey or pure maple syrup. But even that we didn't do very often because we were really trying to
Yeah.
cut that all out.
That's really good because a lot of these keto substitutes, and let's face it, I say I suddenly decide I'm going to go keto. I look on Tinternet. I can go on Amazon. I'm going to buy all these lovely keto foods. There's some bars. There's some keto rice. There's some keto something else. And there's a keto cake. I might buy that as well. And you end up going from eating a whole lot of processed crap food to a whole lot of processed keto, I'm going to use the word crap, food as well. So you're going from one bunch of processed food to another bunch of processed foods. It almost
Correct. And
defeats the process.
right. And it makes it so confusing now for new people. And my heart really goes out to them because they're really trying to do the right thing. And the system is doing everything to keep them hooked. And
Because
it just
people are
makes it
trying
so
to
much
make
harder.
money out of it, isn't it? You've got a whole bunch of
Yes.
people that have jumped on board thinking, hey, if this is the new craze, then how do we make money out of it? No one's making money out of just selling fresh meat and fresh veg and fresh food.
No, there's no big beef out there that's
No.
marketing to us. So
No. Okay. So what would you, back then, for example, what would your meals have looked like then?
usually it was just some sort of meat, so pork, chicken, or beef generally, with a side of vegetables that we would cook in either butter or bacon fat.
Okay. And how did you feel about eating all this fat? Because you would have been told by somebody back then that on keto you're supposed to eat lots of fat, and you've grown up being told that fat's bad.
I guess I was told that. I don't think it ever factored in. It's hard to think back that far, honestly, but I don't think I ever struggled with it because the food tasted so good. I did grow up in a house where we used an alternate to butter, so some sort of margarine, and I always thought that I liked what it tasted like until I had real butter, and then I was like, oh. This is what it's supposed to taste like. So, so actually, and then making bacon, and then putting broccoli with this crisp bacon in it, and it kind of burned the edges a little bit. It was delicious. I enjoyed everything I ate. So I didn't really question it at all. Like I said, also I was listening to this podcast. I'm an avid reader, so as soon as someone would come on that had a book, I would go to the library and check out that book and read it. So I was simultaneously educating myself. And I went to college for an environmental degree. So I think I always had inside of me this grassroots change feeling, like I need to be part of some sort of grassroots change. And I was very well aware that the environmentalist movement kind of went away from me. I didn't really change, but the movement changed. So I think I just grasped onto this with that same kind of passion. It was like, oh my gosh, we've been lied to all of this time. Like I immediately recognized that we were being lied to and totally just grabbed this and went with it, and uh, just continued to educate myself with different books, podcasts, documentaries, all those types of things, just to be like, there's for every hypothesis, there's generally several other hypotheses out there, and we're latched onto one that has been disproven countless times, and we can't seem to grasp any other options that may be out there, because of what we talked about with there's money involved. There's
Yeah,
a lot of money involved in
there's
that.
a
So
lot of big money involved, and
exactly. So I was
mm,
all for it. It didn't question it one bit
yeah.
as soon as I started.
And then, of course, you have the conspiratorial, there's another big word, the conspiratory side of me that says that, big pharma, not a big pharma. I'm not talking about a big bloke that grows cows. I'm talking about pharmacy with a PH, who want, there's the theory that, let's face it, those pharmacological companies, they want people to have high cholesterol because statins are huge to their marketplace. They want you to feel depressed so that they can chug down more antidepressants down your throat. The last thing they really want, and I'm talking about the farmer here, I'm not talking about general doctors and so on. The last thing they want is for the population to get healthy. Can you imagine how many billions of dollars that they're making that suddenly they wouldn't be making?
It's coming from all sides. So we're funding the plants that are going into the ground, and then we're turning around and turning them into cheap foods that people will eat. Then we're turning around and selling them the prescriptions that will keep them healthy from the cheap foods that you ate. And I mean, it's just this cycle that is quite infuriating if you dig down deep enough. And I was right there. I mean, I was like, oh, I'm a lady without a cause, and this became the cause
Yeah.
that I grasped onto and really have not turned back. I mean, um, we moved. We lived in South Carolina, so on the East Coast, and so we moved from there to Texas about a year after we changed our diet. And that was really the precipice for me to notice that I was feeling well. I was still on medication that whole time for my depression. And um, that move, I made it through, realizing that I could handle some situations that I hadn't been able to handle before. But as part of our move, when we got here, it was like, oh, there's all these different ice cream shops. Let's help the kids with the transition and take them out for ice cream. So there was a time there where, I was making the excuse to eat a little ice cream, and then I wrote this post, and it was like, I feel eight. I was like, well, we just moved and we're taking the kids out for ice cream, and I'm only getting one scoop, but my joints are aching and my head hurts, but the people are like, stop eating the ice cream. Just like, oh yeah,
Mm.
that must be what it is. So we've not tried, like knowingly tried to stop eating this way, but things slip in sometimes, and then when they do slip in, they tend to stay for a long time, and then you start noticing things, and it's like, oh, I
Mm.
need to put the brakes on, and I need to go back to what I was
Yeah.
doing.
It's funny when you're on the inside, like if you're fully keto and then you drift out of keto and you go, and within a month or two you're back to eating your standard diet. And when you're in keto, you forget about all of the things that you were missing. Like, for example, and I don't mean ice cream here, I mean joint pain, I mean irritable bowel syndrome, I mean I won't say depression, but certainly anxiety and all of the mental issues. And then after a while of eating normal food, you think, I used to feel a whole lot better. It's just, well, I guess I'm saying is that sometimes I know I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed. And sometimes it does take a little bit. I used to go back to being ketogenic when I had a judo competition coming up and I needed to lose 5 kilos. So I used it as a way of losing weight without losing muscle. And of course, next thing I know, 2 weeks in, I've got all this bounding energy and all of those problems I had have disappeared. And it's like, you idiot, Pete. Why do you have to always do these things the hard way? Why can't you just realize what's good for you. But that's life, isn't it?
Yes, and that's completely normal behavior, right? We start to miss the things. We have to kind of go through a grieving process. So if you haven't gone through that grieving process, it's always just going to be sitting there like, I can have this one thing again later and it's not going to bother me. And then, of course, we do the thing. And then, of course, it makes us feel bad. And then we have to say, okay, no more. And then actually grieve, actually be sad about the fact that that thing is not coming back into your world. Work through those emotions and the pain and all of that stuff and let it go and release it. Some people can do that the first time. Most people, it will kick them in the head several times before they get it. But I think eventually everybody finds that happy place for themselves.
Yeah, and I think you also learn that the foods that you eat on a ketogenic diet are so much tastier. Like, I do not miss rice or pasta or potatoes, mashed potatoes, roast potatoes. I don't miss any of that stuff. I don't miss having my eggs on toast. I don't put them on toast anymore. I just put them on the plate. I had a gammon steak this morning with 3 runny eggs on them, on the gammon steak, and it was damn delicious. It's that sort of thing. You learn how to go around the foods that you thought were indispensable and you could not live without.
Yes, exactly. And that's why I say I didn't in the beginning my substitutes were, instead of ice cream I was eating high fat yogurt. It wasn't some sort of keto ice cream or sweetened thing or whatever. It was just I replaced. But I oftentimes say I don't add, just subtract. Don't try to add new things to replace those things because they never scratch the itch. And then you're just constantly seeking something else. You're constantly kind of feeding the beast and it just keeps wanting more. So if you just subtract and never add, it'll be so much better. And the food
That's
is delicious.
Yeah, that's a nice philosophy. I must remember that one. So getting back to your story then. So we touched on, well, actually moved on to cholesterol, but what we haven't touched on is how this change to a ketogenic diet affected your mental illness. You had bipolar, you had depression, and you had OCD.
Yes. So like I said, we had moved about a year and a half after starting low carb. And um you know, in the past, something as stressful as your husband moves away for 3 months and you're left with 2 kids, a dog, and a house, the that would be curl up in a fetal position and not be able to face the world type of situation. Instead, I realized that I was actually joyous. We had lived in South Carolina for 10 years. We had roots there. We had, a base of friends that were like family to us, and we said goodbye to everything we knew and went halfway across the country. That's enough to put someone who is not doing well out for quite some time. But I was excited. I was joyful. I was looking ahead at the opportunity that was in front of us. Even though I had no idea actually what it was, I just was able to get through it. So sometime after settling in, and the foolishness with the ice cream settled down and I stopped doing that. I mentioned to my husband that I really feel like I'm feeling better. And like I said, I was researching, always just continuously learning through different resources. So I started to hear that this ketogenic diet thing could help heal the brain, and I was thinking maybe I fall in that category because I've been doing this a year and a half. I'm still medicated, but on the times that I'm not sedated, I'm joyful. I'm going for walks. I'm enjoying a sunset. I'm enjoying the sunrise. These are things I would sleep through generally. I would not be awake for that, but I'm actually on purpose taking the dog out for a walk at sunrise and at sunset so that I could stand there and enjoy it and feel it and see the beauty. And these are just things that I never noticed before. So I said that to my husband and I said, I really think I want to try to wean off of this medication. I think that it's not doing what it should be doing, and I think that I might be able to handle life without it. And I won't know unless I try. I have to try. This is important. I have to try this. And it was important to me to include my family in it because I knew that they noticed when I was depressed before I would notice that I was depressed. So we even brought the children in on it and said, you don't have to talk to me, but if you feel like something's going on with mommy, go tell daddy, and we'll deal with it. So we found just a general practitioner. I told her what I was doing. I asked her if she would help me titrate off the medication, and she did, which I think is just absolutely amazing. This is not something that a general practitioner would normally do. Uh,
No.
so she did, and we titrated off. It took some time. I honestly don't remember how long it took. The one of the last medications I was on had such a strong hold on me that it took several months to titrate it down fully. But I have not gone back on any antidepressants or antipsychotics since. And so that was about 6 years ago now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Mm.
So and that's the thing. That's so now I have this no nap rule that I've set for myself because I slept for 10 years and I miss things. So now I make a point. If it's not pouring down rain outside, I go outside every single day. If I can catch a sunrise or a sunset, I will. I mean, these are things that I just missed out on. I'm mending the relationships with my children and my husband, and I'm trying new things. Like, I'm putting myself out there in ways that I never thought. Here I am. I'm 46 years old, and I'm like just dipping my toe into what life is like because I missed so much before. And all of this is this new kind of awakening that I have because the depression is gone, the OC symptoms are gone, all of that is gone, and I'm not sedated on the medications anymore.
Hmm. So, what would be your main? I mean, it's one thing for people who are listening, they're thinking, okay, what? So, all she did though is change what? Change the food she eats? That sounds a little bit simple.
I use the word simple quite frequently to describe how to eat. It's People think that going low carb, ketogenic, carnivore, that it's so hard. But honestly, it's so simple that we try to make it hard. so
Yeah.
we just want to try to figure everything out and do this replacement and that replacement and try this and that. It's like our meal that we eat probably 4 days out of the week is just ground beef and bacon mixed together in a bowl. And sometimes we season it. Sometimes we might put some marinara sauce on it. And most times we just eat it the way it is with a little salt. Um, and yes, that is what made everything different. It's
Mm.
hard to believe. And I'm not going to try to explain any of the science because I'm by no means a scientist, but the research is out there.
Mm.
There are people like Dr. Ian Campbell who are doing research on this. There's the whole Bazooki group and what they're funding. Metabolic Mind. There's Dr. Chris Palmer. There's Dr. Georgia Ede. There's studies out there. This is being researched. This out there. It exists, and I want more people to know about it. That's why I so openly share my story, because yeah, look, let me tell you, those antipsychotics that I was on, and I still don't work. I didn't work. My husband was the sole provider for our family, and I always felt like I was a burden just because I was not very fun to be around, but also a financial burden. I was not contributing to the family financially. And then on top of it, these antipsychotics are like $900 a month. Eh, this is ridiculous. Like, I'm trying to feel well and I'm trying to be here for my family at the same time. I'm basically taking food out of our mouths or opportunities away. We can't do things because mommy's got to pay for her medication. And that's a big deal. And all I did to fix it was accidentally stumble upon eating a ketogenic diet for a completely different reason,
Mm.
and it all went away. And that's what keeps me focused on it now. That's why I eat the way I do now, because I know what will happen. I know what happens if I eat, let's say, more than 20 grams of carbs consistently, day in and day out. It's coming back. I've done
Mm.
that experiment. I know what it will do. It comes back. So I don't say that I'm cured or completely healed. It's definitely in a remission, because if I choose to eat something like that daily, any carbohydrate, and I'm talking, this experiment I did was with a sweet potato. So it's not, I'm talking about a whole food. I'm not talking about processed food. I won't even go there. But even too much carbohydrate from some vegetation will take me back. And that's just not a life I want to go back to.
Mm. It's interesting you said that, because I've often thought that. I agree entirely, because people often say, I'm cured. And my thought process, and knowing from my own experience, is I'm not cured. Like you say, I'm in remission. So I have, whether it's mental, I think with me it's a bit difficult to say mental illness, but other people who know me may say so. Certainly feeling sad and down, and also the like we said, the joint pains and the other physical things, they have gone away, but they're not cured. They're in remission. While I'm not eating that food, and as soon as, like you say, as soon as I eat that food, within a few days or a week, I can expect all those to come back. So you're quite right.
Yeah, and
Are
that's
you?
definitely something that builds up. Like, it's not like if I eat 20 grams of broccoli right now, I would be in bed tomorrow. But if I decided to do that every day for a week, yeah, that's
Hmm.
exactly what happens. My trigger is that the first thing I think when I wake up is I can't wait to go back to bed. That's my trigger. So I know I've
Hmm.
gone too far. However, at this point, my husband and I are basically completely carnivore. There's very few things that I eat that aren't meat.
Okay,
so
that
yeah,
that that
so
answers my
that keeps
question I was
me,
about to ask.
yeah,
Yeah.
so that keeps it very easy. It's
Yeah.
again, we go back to the word simple. It's simple. You cut out everything except for the meat.
Hmm.
There's no confusion there. That's what it is. It's
Yeah.
very, very cut and dry.
So on that basis, then, you've got carnivore 1 and carnivore 2. So carnivore 1 is where you eat just meat. Then you've got carnivore 2 that says, okay, I'm going to eat meat and dairy, like cheeses and stuff, and eggs and fish and stuff. Well, would you put fish into the meat category?
Yeah, I think fish is meat.
Yeah, exactly. So that's
It's
fine.
flesh.
Yeah, okay. So
I just made a bunch of vegans mad with that word.
I
Sorry.
don't. Yeah, that's right. The flesh diet. Um, and so, what about eggs
I
for
do
you?
eat eggs. So I have actually kind of this really hard time. So we're going to go off on a little tangent here. I have this really hard time with um, this thought that there's levels. My personal thought is, if someone is low carb and getting what they want out of low carb, and it's not even in the ketogenic range, and if somebody's only eating meat and salt, we need to unite and stop fighting amongst ourselves. I was just on a carnivore group in Facebook, and somebody said they were putting a little tiny bit of honey in something. Oh my God, they got annihilated in that group. Now, personally, I don't want honey, and I hope that that's not something that this person does often. But if that's her, that we're adults, that was the choice that that person made, and let's leave her alone and let her do her thing.
Yeah,
And if it bothers her, just like we talked about earlier, if it bothers you, you're going to make that mistake a couple times and then say, go through your grieving process and move on. But
yeah,
I think there's way too much infighting on this level carnivore, that level carnivore. You're not ketogenic. If you're finding benefit by cutting out the processed foods, and this is where I think we can agree with vegans, we're cutting out processed foods and we're eating whole foods. Now they just go to plants, and we've gone towards meat. but essentially the idea is the same. If we cut out the processed stuff, we're going to find health in some capacity. I believe that being meat based does that better because meat is processed better by your body, and you don't have to fight as much with the plants. But whatever is working, I don't want to fight within the low carb community at any
No,
of these different levels.
no,
I eat
exactly.
mostly meat. I call myself mostly carnivore. I am always NSNG. So I'm always no sugars, no grains, and I eat mostly meat. And I'm not gonna validate somebody with well, you're eating seasonings, and so that doesn't make you a carnivore. That's
Yeah,
baloney.
no, that's right. I find normally I've been I've been kind of ketogenic for the last 12 years. And just recently, actually, because I was talking to various people on the podcasts and they were generally carnivore, I thought, I'll give this carnivore caper a go. I'd thought about it off and on for the last couple of years, and I thought, just doesn't sound healthy, not eating any vegetation at all. So then I finally thought, well, I'll give it a go. And sure enough, I've been doing it for about a month, and already, actually within a week, I noticed that a couple, which I'm not going to go into, a couple of chronic annoyances just went away that I always assumed was something else, and it turns out it was probably because of my leafy greens. And it's amazing. It's like, how did that happen? But we also know that things might change. Like someone who's an avid carnivore who has put a serious illness into remission might find that in 2 years' time they need to introduce some other foods in. We can't ever say that I'm going to be keto all my life, or I'm going to be carnivore all my life, I'm going to be vegan all my life. Hey, at the moment, what I'm doing is working for me. And I think
Well,
that's
and
the
you know
important
what?
thing.
We look at this. We made this 1977 or whatever it was. We made this dietary guidelines for all Americans. Have we not learned yet that this diet that we are saying is going to work for everyone doesn't work for everyone? So can't we just also assume then that there's going to be this range of low carb ketogenic carnivore diets that will work for some people and won't work for other people, and let's just be happy with that? Like,
Mm,
we're making a change. Like, this is our revolution. This is our grassroots effort. Why are we fighting amongst ourselves? Why aren't we uniting and coming up with a way to bring this forward for more people to join?
yeah.
Because essentially we want everyone to be healthy, and people who are unhealthy are going to then be a burden on society if we're paying for their medical care or that kind of thing. So why are we fighting amongst ourselves? We're all healthy in our own way. Let's go grab other people and have them join us.
Yeah, for sure. So I think the biggest thing that people can do straight away, if you're listening and you're thinking, I might give this a go, and it comes back to me saying before, how can something as simple as changing the foods you eat make a big difference? But there's been a lot of scientific work, as you mentioned, Robyn. There's been a lot of scientific work, and they have found, for example, that our common little sugar, even with your table sugar, half of that is a product called fructose. And fructose is a huge enemy of the body. It was actually designed, this is really interesting, it was designed, the humans have evolved to need fructose, but only for about a month or two in summertime when all the berries and fruit are ripe, so that we can eat ourselves stupid on all of those fruit, which are all really high in fructose. The fructose takes over our ability to feel satiated, so we don't feel full, so we can eat more, which is why when you're eating sugary stuff, you can be thinking, oh, I think I'm going to be sick. I'll just put in another mouthful. I'll just fill my gob one more time. No, I can fill it another time. That's because the fructose has overridden your satiety. I'm not very good with big words today. And the other thing it does is it converts all your little mitochondria, who are running around providing all of your energy and all of your hormones. And basically, they're the life form that's inside every cell in our bodies. And this fructose gets in there and changes it. And instead of the mitochondria creating energy, it creates fat. So it makes us fat. And that's another adaptation so that in late summer, we pile on the fat, we slow down our metabolism, and we get ready for winter so we can get through a nice, long, cold winter with plenty of food strapped to us. Trouble is now, of course, fructose is in every food you buy, every processed food. And you've got fruit juices and so on. You've got, as you mentioned before, honey is just full of fructose. And you've got all these foods that we're eating all the time, 24/7. So we're permanently getting really fat for winter, only we're not getting a winter. So we're never thinning back down again.
Right,
So
winter never comes. We're just ready for it at all times.
Yeah, it's the opposite to Game of Thrones where winter is coming. No, in this case, winter isn't coming. We're just getting ready for it. Yeah, we're just packing for winter without having to worry about it arriving.
Right.
So it is really interesting. But so that's where the ketogenic, carnivore, low-carb diet makes the difference, because by getting rid of that sugar from our diets, we are stopping that entire process from happening.
Right.
And
And
then,
when I go through this process, when I went through this process over the past 7 years, I've never checked a ketone. Never. I've never checked anything. So that again falls back to, it doesn't have to be complicated unless you make it complicated. Like, I've had all of these benefits. I'm going to go ahead and assume, since I eat 99.8% meat, that I'm in ketosis. I don't need to check it. And because my brain is working properly, then I must be feeding it ketones and not sugar. So, I don't need to prove to that extent. I'm feeling the benefits. All I had to do was cut out the sugar, cut out the grain, and cut out the seed oils, and cook with healthy fats, and eat a little higher fat, and eat a lot of protein from meat. And this is what happened. This is the amazing difference that has made.
well said. So that was part 1 with Robyn, and part 2 is coming up in the next podcast, which will be podcast number 29. I hope you tune in and listen to the rest of the story, because it is quite interesting, and we talk about all sorts of other stuff as well that obviously pertains to her mental and physical well-being. If you need more information on the ketogenic diet or the carnivore diet, then you're welcome to take a look at my book. It's 200 pages long. You can buy it from Amazon, and it's also called See Your Toes Again, the same as this podcast, See Your Toes Again. And that helps you with all sorts of things to do with the low-carb diet, and how you can achieve it, and what to look out for if you are starting afresh. It's nice to know what you're in for. It's nice to see the problems that you're going to strike before you get to them. So that's available at Amazon. A little bit less than 10 quid or $11 US. So take a look at that if you're interested. Right, I hope you will join us into podcast number 29 for the rest of the story. Thank you. Bye-bye.